Nigeria seeks support of African oil-producing nations towards stabilizing the global oil market.
Federal government goes tough on illegal immigrants at the nation's borders.
Once you don't enter our country without effective payment of the right duty.
Navy's short service corps graduates tasked to bring discipline and expertise to bear in service to fatherland.
The President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, expects you to be loyal to the constituted authority.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss sexual harassment in tertiary institutions and possible remedies.
Sex for marks or grades is perhaps one of the most prevalent social vices that is underreported in the nation's ivory towers.
Of course, Blessing, and because it is so grossly underreported, any case that goes public has, as it were, a lot of hype in recognition of the boldness or courage of the victim who has spoken out.
Exactly, Kingsley. You can count such reported cases of sex for grades that became public. Well, on the fingers of one's hand, meaning that the very, very few. It's either the university or the institution in question now have a way, that's the authorities, have a way of addressing the issue before it gets to the public space. And the victims sometimes are too scared to speak up.
Now, one of such sexual harassment cases came to light in April 2018 after a leaked telephone recording exposed the university don, Richard Akindele, a professor of management accounting at Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. It was, of course, demanding sex from a postgraduate student named Monica Osage in order to pass her in her MBA examination.
As we recall that story and several others, in that particular case, the university initially suspended Professor Akindele indefinitely following an interim investigation, and also eventually he was summarily dismissed in June 2018 after a full-fledged investigation by the university and a bid to serve as deterrent to others.
Well, of course, he also was tried eventually and sent to 2 years imprisonment. But how much of a deterrence has the jailing, as it were, of Professor Akindele served for his other colleagues? Now, an undercover documentary by an investigative journalist already has exposed the lecturer at the University of Lagos, who, of course, was seen propositioning and sexually harassing a prospective teenage student, as well as, of course, another instance of sexual harassment of a female student by a lecturer, this time at the University of Ghana.
Apparently, the latest saga has sparked off widespread condemnation, compelling the University of Lagos to act promptly by suspending the said lecturer, Dr. Boniface Benegu, a former sub-dean of Faculty of Arts in the University of Lagos.
That's true, Blessing. And one reason why these cases may not deter other sexual predators still at large in our tertiary institutions is the fact that there is a huge burden usually of proof on the victims. Now, unless, of course, advancement in technology is now possibly coming to their rescue, as we saw in the case of Monica against Professor Akindele of OAU, formerly. Yes.
Exactly, and several others too have the advantage of technology helping them to actually state a case. But we also hear that some randy lecturers take advantage of the poor academic grades of some female students to advance their sexual fantasies as a reward for better academic grades. Already, the president, that's President Muhammadu Buhari, in a reaction to the latest case, has welcomed the reintroduction of a sexual harassment bill in the Senate, saying stricter laws are needed to prevent the abuse of women and girls in schools.
Exactly, but this is not to say that the problem of sexual harassment exists only in tertiary institutions. Of course, sexual harassment is a societal issue, but our focus this morning is on the problem in tertiary institutions. As we're asking is the question, is it right for lecturers to seek to exploit their students or sexually harass female students? What are the causes of sexual harassment in our tertiary institutions? And what are the possible remedies that will seek and ultimately help convert these lecturers into the lecturers that they are supposed to be?
You're right, Kingsley. Well, these are some of the questions. More will come, even as our guests will attend to these ones that we've raised now on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, as we discuss sexual harassment in tertiary institutions and possible remedies. My name is Blessing Abu. Thank you for joining us on the program.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Blessing to also welcome you to the program being broadcast on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're right here at the Abuja headquarters studios, and we are live. As usual, we have our complimentary segments, and these include business, newspaper review, and others. For now, let's join our colleague Nolin Ibelame for the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Nolin.
Good morning, Kingsley and Blessing. Good morning, Nigeria, and here is the early morning news. President of South Sudan, Salva Kiir Mayardit, has commended Nigeria's leadership in galvanizing African oil producers to stabilize the global oil market for the benefit of the continent. President Kiir made the remark when he received Nigeria's Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Timi Silva, in Juba, South Sudan.
We are grateful that His Excellency the President Buhari have sent a message to his brother General Salva Kiir Mayardit on issues related to oil sector, and particularly in Africa, and as he said, issues that are related to OPEC and to OPO, and also the invitation of our Minister of Petroleum to participate in an upcoming conference that will be held in Abuja.
Meanwhile, the federal government is rallying African oil producers to ensure that the continent benefits maximally from hydrocarbon deposits. Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timi Silva, who doubles as president of the African Petroleum Producers Organization, traversed Angola, Gabon, and South Sudan, which are also signatories to the OPEC Declaration of Cooperation for this purpose. Discussions focused on compliance agreement by member nations ahead of the joint ministerial meeting committee of OPEC and non-OPEC countries in Vienna, Austria in December. Meanwhile, the Minister of State for Petroleum has inaugurated Operation White, an initiative to guarantee energy security in the country, even as the federal government inaugurated a team of 89 persons drawn from 5 key agencies to ensure transparency and accountability in the distribution of petroleum products across the country. Members of the team were drawn from the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Department of Petroleum Resources, DPR, Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency, PPPRA, Petroleum Equalization Fund, PEF, and the Department of State Security, DSS. The Nigeria judiciary appears to have experienced a lot of change in recent times, but legal practitioners are of the view that more needs to be done. This view was echoed by the Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters at a meeting with the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Ibrahim Tanko, and President of the Nigerian Courts of Appeal, Zainab Bulkachua.
Ensure that court which is making a request for the employment has all the facilities.
We've been trying with the challenges, we've been trying with the workload, and we've been doing our best to ensure that we do what is expected of us.
This, no doubt, would enable us to make appropriate legislative interventions in times ahead for the betterment of the judiciary.
And on security, graduates of Navy Direct Short Service Course 26, Regular Course 66 cadets, and other trainees commissioned as sub-lieutenants have been tasked to bring discipline and expertise gained to bear in their service to fatherland. This was the message of President Muhammadu Buhari, who was represented by the Chief of Defense Staff, General Gabriel Olanishakin, at the passing out parade held at Navy Training School, One, Rivers State.
The President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, expects you to be loyal to the constituted authority and be prepared to give necessary support to the Nigerian police and other paramilitary agencies in the discharge of their duties.
Government has restated commitment to ensure adequate protection of lives and property of Nigerians, especially those living within and around border towns. The Minister of Interior, Ogbeni Rauf Arebeshola, gave the assurance while inaugurating an operation base for men and officers of Nigeria Immigration Service, Ogun State Command at Ojaodon in Yewa North Local Government area of the state, reassuring that security remains topmost priority of the federal government.
From duties alone, custom duties alone, was almost quadrupled what we had ever had. Why? Because with the drill that is now enforced or taking place at the border post, goods do not enter our country without effective payment of the right duty. We expect
the Nigerian embassy in Cotonou, the Republic of Benin, has debunked insinuations arising from a video clip making rounds that the embassy was attacked by hoodlums and property vandalized. A statement by the Nigerian ambassador to the Republic of Benin, Ambassador Kayode Oguntuashe, states that the news is fake and reiterates that the embassy of Nigeria in Cotonou was never attacked. The embassy's premises and its personnel, he says, are currently safe, well protected, and free from any form of threat or danger. The recent report by the Ernst & Young naming Nigeria as the third largest recipient of foreign direct investments, FDI, in Africa is a testimony that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is focused on delivering its electoral promises. According to the Buhari Media Organization, BMO, the large inflow of foreign direct investment into the country is the direct positive outcome of the federal government's policy of ease of doing business, favorable investment climate, and relative security prevalent in the country. A statement by its chairman, Ni Akinshiju, BMO notes that the deliberate efforts of the current administration to curb corruption in the system and removing obstacles for foreign investments enabled an inflow of about $8 billion in 2018 in at least 65 projects, leading to the creation of about 10,000 direct and indirect jobs across the country. The group therefore enjoins Nigerians to continue to keep faith with the Buhari administration as it continues rebuilding the country. The federal government has suspended the Ibadan-Oyo State Examination Center for candidates' unruly behavior at the center. The computer-based test center is one of the 47 in use for the 2019 October Diet Teachers Professional Qualifying Examination nationwide.
January of next year, if you are not a qualified teacher, you will have no place in our classrooms.
And those are the news highlights for now. The program continues with Blessing and Kinsley after this break. I am Nolin Ebel Ame. Good morning.
The new edition of TV Guide is out, exclusively taking a look at the traditional television and new media. Are they comparable or complementary? Media industry players give perspective on the trends, progress, challenges, and the way forward. Find out on this compelling edition of TV Guide, Expository interviews with stars of the team within our space. Becky Madujemo of NTA, Utibe Umore of AIT, Nifemi Oguntai of TVC, and a host of others. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, also feature Iya Medina.
I'm the CEO, managing director of Iya Medina Sister Restaurant. I choose to serve. Shut up your mouth. Let me finish.
A TV drama series on NTA. Let's get to meet the characters behind Iya Medina. This edition also presents exciting features on tourism, culture, entertainment, sports, health, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendors near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, cordially invites members of the general public to a special town hall meeting on security. Date, Tuesday 15th October 2019. Time, 10 a.m. Venue, Katsina State Local Government Commission Conference Room, Kaito Road, opposite State House of Assembly, Katsina State. Deaconess Grace Isu Gekwe, Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture. Announcer.
The Aerial Assurance Challenge.
Oh, thank you. But what assurance can you give our daughter?
Everything. With the new look Aerial, I can even do the laundry.
Prove it then.
Okay. Let's make this stain even tougher. Now, let's wash the cloth with your detergent and with new look Aerial. Do you believe me now? Aerial, now in a new look pack.
Their ancestors were taken away as slaves. Now they return as kings and queens on a pilgrimage back to the motherland. The third door of return ceremony, Diaspora Festival, Badagry, Lagos, Nigeria, takes place in Badagry from the 15th to the 20th of October 2019. For details on participation and sponsorship, contact the following. Website adore.ng. The African Door of Return Experience. Don't miss it. Brought to you by the African Door of Return Experience Initiative in collaboration with the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission and the African Renaissance Foundation. Chief host, the Lagos State Government.
NTA Abuja is 40. Come, let's celebrate 40 years of impressive TV broadcasting at the grassroots. On Thursday, 17th October 2019, there'll be a lecture titled Lens and Sound, Television, a tool for social reorientation and good governance. Guest lecturer, Professor Oluyemisi Oluremi Obiladi, Professor of Education and Women's Studies, Obafemi Awolowo University. Special guest of honor, His Excellency, Prince Dapo Abiodun, Governor of Ogun State. Royal Father of the Day, His Royal Majesty, Oba Adedotun Aremu Gbadebo, the Alake and Pramontrola of Egbaland. Chairman of the occasion, Chief Olatunde Anyela Abudu, Mayegun of Egbaland. Chief host, Malam Yakubu Ibn Mohammed, Director General, NTA. Other activities lined up for the occasion include an array of awards to distinguished entities held to walk on Saturday, 12th October 2019, while a novelty match comes up on Tuesday, 15th October 2019 at MKO Abiola Stadium. Come, celebrate 40 years of impressive television at the grassroots with us and take NCA Abuja to the next level.
What we are really cultivating here is a better future for all Nigerian women, and it's not always easy. Panadol Extra relieves headache, backache, joint pain, toothache, and menstrual pain. The pain is worth it.
Thank you for joining us. So, good morning, Nigeria. The partial closure of land borders between Nigeria and Benin Republic is addressing challenges of smuggling of rice and small arms. These and more on Business News with Abdukarim Zurmi.
In August of 2019, the closure of land borders took effect, and all the better for it. Due to this, the manufacturing of products in-house, according to statistics, has improved, and the slow rise of improvement of the economy is imminent. With this in mind, it is possible for the country to export rice and other products within Africa and overseas. It is a move that will help jumpstart the vast potential within the country's borders and help curb criminality in terms of smuggling. Meanwhile, oil prices rose on Friday 11th of October 2019 amidst the US-China trade negotiations. According to reports, however, talks went well and the two sides will meet once again to resume their negotiations. In other news, 2 missiles apparently struck an Iranian oil tanker which was traveling through the Red Sea of Saudi Arabia on Friday, with oil leaking into the sea. This could make the tensions rise between the two countries. And now for the Nigerian Stock Exchange for the week ended on Friday 11th of October 2019. Subsequent update of today's stock will follow later. With business news, Abdul Karim Zermi.
Many thanks, Abdul Karim Zurmi, for the business package. Next for us, it's newspaper review.
So beginning of a new week, and a newspaper reviewer, Bayo Toyobe, is already seated. Welcome, Bayo.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good morning. Good morning, Kesley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Good to see you. Okay, well, let's have all of the Daily Sun newspaper. And a late story, or rather, let's begin with the earpiece, which is beside the nameplate. APC, that's All Progressives Congress. Fresh plot to sack Oshomole. It's fake, party chair replies. Details on page 8. Now, late story says, with a kicker, minimum wage war. Prepare for total strike. NLC tests Nigerians. Advises workers to stockpile food and others. That's in greater detail on page 6. Presidency and PDP fight over fake news. 2 riders to that headline. Opposition party is bearer, says APC. And the other rider says APC's wish for one-party state won't work. That's according to the PDP. Federal government to construct coastal rail in Onitsha. That's attributed to President Buhari. Sets 2021 date for completion of Second Niger Bridge. Details on page 12. CAN, that's the Christian Association of Nigeria, forced dialogue with bandits. Says it's not solution to insecurity. Details inside. And the photograph on the front page there shows the First Lady, Mrs. Aisha Buhari, briefing news persons on arrival from London. She was at the Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport yesterday. I almost took airpeace to another country. That's according to the airpeace chairman, Onyema. Details can be found on pages 29 and 30.
Okay, let's get to the blueprint. The blueprint has the story. APC to PDP, CUPP, and other parties. You failed in your responsibilities. And 2 riders to that, stop distracting government. It's one from the governing party. And our democracy deserves better. More details about that on page 6. But just above that, we have, Kingsley took part of that with a photograph of the First Lady returning from London yesterday. And she puts a comment to the press this week. Fake news will plunge Nigeria into trouble, Aisha Buhari. The rider, it doesn't do any good. I'll find out more details about that on page 6 as well. Just beside the nameplate, we have Federal Capital Territory authorities taxed force impounds 79 rams over traffic violation. Details on page 14. 2 rescued in another Lagos building collapse. There are other stories, but let's get Bayo to come in at this point.
Well, let's start with the issue that's become very current now, fake news. The First Lady, Aisha Buhari, returned yesterday. Upon arrival on a European airline, she explained that she left in August and she has been away to take her usual 6 weeks vacation and be with the children. She, however, said she had been unwell and she also got treatment. She went on Hajj and the doctors advised that she should return to rest, and she has come home now. She's still going to continue to rest. However, in her absence, it was exploited to generate a lot of false information, and the First Lady now had to explain that yes, the video that people had saw was an incident that happened a year ago, but it was transmitted recently on the social media to indicate that she was denied access to the Aso Villa. The First family have been plagued with series of falsity peddled especially in the social media. It may be recalled that when the president first took his medical vacation, he was reported to have gone into a coma and even vegetative state. A state governor even claimed he had photographs of him in a comatose state and he can never come back to life. Then the head of the president granted an interview over radio, and they said, no, that's false. Let's have interview of him on television. Then the Archbishop of Canterbury visited him. The next thing we heard was that, well, the person you are seeing there is not him. It's a clone. It's a Jibril from Sudan. Even when you clone, the clone that is known is Molly the sheep. And you had a Molly, the sheep itself, and the baby Molly. So if you had a clone of a person, it would mean that you have a clone of Muhammadu Buhari, who will be an infant, and it will take 70 years to grow to come to the state of. But in spite of that, they quickly change it and say it's a body double. But the interesting thing is that one after the other, the president usually keeps quiet. His component is that leave the falsehood of galloping horse to go on, but the truth of this going at a snail speed will eventually catch up with it. So fake news has become a challenge to us now in Nigeria. The danger is if it is not curbed, it can lead to some fatal consequences, because before people will know that the information is false, some damage may have been done. A corollary is one here now. The Nigeria's ambassador to Benin Republic has also had cause to come and deny that the embassy has not been closed as being reported. Again, it was on the social media. Ambassador Kayode Ugutu has said that the embassy was never attacked. The ambassador says that the embassy premises and its personnel are all safe, well protected, and are free from any form of threat or danger.
Okay, we have other stories. Still, let's get to the bottom part of the blueprint. Minimum wage, Labour insists on October 16th strike. Right, state cancels. More details about that on page 6. Man slumps, dies at Lagos airport over wife's death. That you find on page 5. 2023, Tinubu opens campaign office in Osun. Find more details about that on page 20. Kingsley, any other stories?
I'm done with the rest
Yes, two stories now, two items to comment about. One is the man who died at the airport. I think this is a failure of native intelligence. The man was trying to check into a French airline to travel abroad, and he received a call that his wife died, and he collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital, to the clinic in the airport, but he didn't survive it. What I mean by failure of native intelligence is that in Nigerian culture, when somebody is bereaved, you don't break the news to him immediately. What they do is they left him softly. First, if he was at the airport, say, come back or don't travel. Your wife is in a serious condition. We need your attention. It's only when he returns home that probably you will now break the news to him. But breaking the news to him, you don't know what his condition of health is. And unfortunately, you will now have two deaths. And the children, the family are the ones that will now have to bear the brunt. The other one is the good news, that oil, the NNPC had announced that in the place that is called Bambura in Alkaleri local government of Bauchi State, Nigeria has stricken oil at the depth of about 3,701 feet. Between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m., oil was stricken, and it is said to be oil and gas, and so much so that the gas there had to be flared to avoid danger. And finally, the other one is in Zamfara State. Zamfara State government has received report about the committee on banditry, and you'll be shocked what has come out. The committee was headed by a former Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Abubakar, and it has recommended the removal of 5 emirs and some district heads. The district heads are numbering about 33 district heads. Also recommended for dismissal are 4 police officers, as well as 10 military officers for court-martial. All of them are reported to have been complicit in banditry. However, the report was also forward-looking. It recommended for promotion some 2 police officers who were done well, and also for the family of 2 soldiers who laid down their life in fighting banditry in Zamfara State to be honored.
Okay, but I mean, there's some curiosity about the story out of Zamfara. I mean, it's interesting that the committee has already done its investigation and made its recommendations, which will now be taken up by the state government, and obviously we'll expect a white paper, or we'll follow up with regard to the recommendations made. But what is curious to me is, why would the emirs who have been indicted be involved in the sponsorship of banditry? And why would the district heads also be involved in the sponsorship of banditry? I mean, it's bizarre.
It's security giving way to conspiracy. People who are entrusted with a position of authority apparently now colluding with criminals. This issue was first raised by the former governor, and even one emir from Zamfara challenged the government, emir then, to name the traditional rulers who were involved. And now this investigation has revealed the facts, and they have come to the fore.
I remember that, but I'm just saying, it's just a curiosity as to why those emirs who have been indicted now were involved in the sponsorship of banditry. If you recall, part of the initial step on the suspicion was that, okay, there was a linkage between banditry and illegal mining, mostly by artisanal miners. And so on and so forth. Now, were the bandits providing cover for the artisanal miners, or were, I don't know, that's part of what, that's not been reported in the stories that have come out with regard to the committee report. I don't think it's, in my opinion, that the committee report would suffice without indicating what went on. You can have a suspicion, or there could be evidence leading to a very strong suspicion that XYZ, have been engaged in the sponsorship. But why were they doing it, and what are the other, or where the other linkages? Otherwise, I mean, there might be a recurrence, because I don't think the federal government has lifted the embargo it placed, some months ago on the mining activities in Zamfara.
Yes.
So that's a very curious
They are all intertwined. Mining and also conflict over markets for which headers and the communities were having conflicts. That is why the governor immediately entered negotiations with the persons who were involved. But I think the investigations involving mining, which has a lot of resources coming from the gold mining there, is the one that is involving some of this political. But details of the report will actually put everything in broad daylight like this.
Suspicions could be rife, at least those could be some other lists to look into as well. Okay, let's take a look at the editorial for today, and it's coming from the Leadership newspaper. You find it on page 3. Poor power supply and tariff hike. That's what the editorial is looking at. Over the years, the recurring poor power supply in the country has often attracted heated debates amongst Nigerians. But what seems to be more disturbing for the people is the incessant hike in electricity tariff, which is definitely not commensurate with the quality of service provided by the companies.
Yes, the editorial is concerned that the recent hike in the tariff of electricity from 8 naira to 14 naira per kilowatt hour is a matter of concern. And the editorial is saying that the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Authority has ignored the processes, that is, process of consultation with consumers and other stakeholders before the tariff is increased. And the editorial highlights a very critical point, that since privatization of electricity in November 2013, the generating range has been between 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts. And the increase we ever attained was 5,375 megawatts in February 2019. However, in spite of this level of generation, not that quantum that is generated that is often transmitted. And therefore, there's no justification for paying higher tariff for poor delivery. And they are insisting that the process of consultation before the increase was not followed. And secondly, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Authority should think twice about the increase in tariff. Secondly, there should be no new tariff. And thirdly, they should correct the errors between collection and remittance inefficiencies, which is robbing the foot soldiers who collect this revenue, putting them in their pockets instead of remitting them to the electricity agencies. They insist that if the tariff is above 5%, then it will affect the disposable income of consumers.
There's no doubt about it. Our energy, that's the power situation, is still in a crisis situation, so a crisis state, and we'll see how the matter will be resolved. Generation and distribution, major challenge. Bayo, thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break. Now, when we return, we'll be dealing with sexual harassment in our tertiary institutions and possible remedies.
An award that has succeeded to pool a galaxy of stars from the north, south, east to the west, and central Africa, and also those that are domiciled beyond the shores of Africa under one roof.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
Film editing and television production techniques are wonders of the tube that you get with continuous training and retraining. NTA Television College Jos therefore invites film editors and producers in public and private television stations to a special 4-week intensive course on film editing and basic television production. Date 14th October to 8th November 2019. Course fee 100,000 naira per participant. Accommodation inclusive. Venue NTA TV College, Rayfield, Jos. Take advantage of the course to upgrade your professional skills in film editing and television production. For inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Please, did you hear that?
Of course I did. That is village headmaster tune.
So, Auntie Amebo was not gossiping then?
Village headmaster is celebrating 50 years.
50? Already?
Wait, you mean people have been watching village headmaster since 1968? How time flies. I have retired, but not tired.
And now 50 years now.
So because of that, we won't get big party.
New date, now 28th to 29th October 2019.
Now me and my body invite you now, and my belly just is sweet. Because I don't say all those people they drink my palmy, then go come drink the tombo again. And me, radio jam, they call you now. They could not forget it.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down.
Do you have a job where you're going to? No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad, or even end up in prison.
Thank you for staying tuned. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, our discussion segment, here we are, and we're taking a look at sexual harassment in tertiary institutions and possible remedies. And to kickstart our conversation, here's the correspondent, Victor Azu, with the Vox Pop. He took on the issue.
The solution that I feel is to sensitize them more about the harm they do to the people, to the victims they do this to. The people that indulge in this have to actually understand that by the time they do this to other people, they also have younger ones or cousins or other ones that this could actually be done to. If somebody should do this to them, how will they feel?
I think the best thing to do is for the students, mostly the female students, they shouldn't be scared of anything. They should report to the appropriate quarters.
I think the Nigerian system should introduce a policy that would instill fear, or there should be a way to go about it. It is not accepted.
If there is a law in a place that will look into that, it will be very, very good. And as well, indiscipline have to be minimized in the part of the teachers and the student as well. You know, in the part of the student, I can say the parents need to look into that very well, look into where your children, what is they are wearing, what they are doing part-time, need to be checked very well.
First, I will start with our ladies. First of all, they will stop putting on skimpy dresses. That is number one. Secondly, our men too, they should stop harassing girls. They should sentence the person because it's an evil act.
They have to prosecute anybody that they caught on the sexual harassment in any child abuse.
All right, that was the Fox Pop there. We already have guests with us in the studios as well as at our network centers. Here with us in the Abuja studios, let's welcome Chinonso Obasi. He's now Executive Director, African Students Education Support Initiative, and is immediate past President, National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS. Mr. Obasi, pleasure to have you with us in the studios this morning.
Same here. Thank you for having me.
All right, so familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, Esther Uzoma, she's a lawyer and also National Coordinator, Proactive Gender Initiatives. Esther Uzoma, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Good morning, Nigerians. Thanks, Kingsley.
Okay. We'll be joined from our Just Network studios by another of our regular guests, Professor Muhammad Menoma. Professor Menoma is former Vice Chancellor of Nasarawa State University. Of course, he will join us later in the course of the conversation.
You're right, Kingsley. We'll also be joined later in the course of the conversation from our Port Harcourt studio. We have Ibim Semenitari. She's the Executive Director Acting the Brown Education Center group of schools. She's a former commissioner, Minister of Information and Communications, Rivers State. But right now, let's welcome from my Ibadan studio, Dele Ashiru, who's the chairman, Unilag chapter of the Academic Staff Union of University. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right. Well, the stories have been out there. Last year, we heard what happened at OAU, that's Obafemi Awolowo University. Professor Richard Akindele was convicted eventually, of course, dismissed also from the institution, having been found guilty of sexually harassing a female postgraduate student, an MBA student, from whom he had demanded 5 rounds of intimacy. Now, latest, of course, is the documentary that's been playing around, and we have all kinds of reactions, of course, from top to bottom and from left to right, including President Muhammadu Buhari, who has also weighed in on this. Incidentally, University of Lagos is in the eye of the storm of this. Let's begin with Dr. Dele Ashiru. Dr. Dele Ashiru, straight away, we know that you have issued a statement. That's to say the Academic Staff Union of University of Lagos has issued a statement on this. But it would appear that sexual harassment of female students by male lecturers is the norm in our tertiary institutions. Why is this so?
Well, thank you very much. I think I should start by saying that that narrative, although dominant, is not correct. In every society, there are deviants. And if deviants manifest their character, it will be preposterous to then generalize. In fact, the worrisome aspect is that the way the news is being reported is as if all male lecturers in Nigerian universities are sexual predators. This is not correct. The cases are isolated. The phenomenon is a natural male-female relationship. The unfortunate aspect is the unequal power relation that attends sexual harassment. In every sector of the society, this manifestation is glaring. So I will take exception to the narrative that it is becoming the norm. It is not. It is rather an exception. And all lecturers cannot be viewed within the premise of sexual predators. There are lecturers who don't indulge in such, condemnable acts. So condemnable as sexual harassment may be, I will not agree that it is the norm. Rather, it is an exception.
Dr. Ashiru, thank you very much there for your response. We already, as we said, we already have guests. Let's bring in Chinonso Abasi, who was president of NANS. You listened to Dr. Ashiru there. What is it that you got from your members when you were leader of NANS? Female students versus lecturers who were chasing them all around the campus for better grades or to supervise their projects and ensure that they pass and graduate.
Well, thank you very much once again for having me. The fact remains, just like the ASU chairman rightly said, in every sector of life, you have the good and the bad set of persons. And when the bad ones tend to do activities, and it is generally seen as if every other person is bad. When I was the president of NANS, I had a couple of reports from the students' angle. And although we have these challenges with female students, or students generally, because of the weakness of student union activities on campus, you find out that students, especially the female ones, they don't really know whom or where to run to when they have challenges or issues. That is why when you find out in some institutions, you find that the chief executive officers tend to be more comfortable when there are no student union activities. They don't like democratically elected unions because the democratically elected unions and institutions tends to give more opportunity for students to be proactive on issues. When I was a student union president, before becoming the NAS president, there were issues which we were able to discuss here some time ago when I was here. And one of those issues was about a member of the union who was also a friend to a female student. And it seems the lecturer, a fellow lecturer, was also interested in that particular student. And you find out the both of them were like dragging who would be in charge of that female folk in the institution. The person I'm talking about was serving under me as the director of transport. And I invited the female student. She's happily married now. I invited the female student. I said, what is happening? She said that the lecturer is after her, but she is not interested because my director of transport is her own boyfriend. We confronted the lecturer in question. I said, my brother, what is happening? He said, look, President, stay off this. I said, no. I can't stay off this. This is a student matter, and I've been duly elected to take charge of these students. The security, their welfare is under my consent. But to cut the whole story short, at the end of the day, we made the lecturer understand the gravity of the offense by going further to be harassing these female folk. And he stayed backwards. So in essence, these things exist every day. But the capacity of a student union leader in charge of a campus will also go a extra mile in taking charge or proving a point or what should be done or what should not be done. We have a case we just finished in Federal Polytechnic, Unwana, under Assessi. This is a situation between a HND2 student of marketing who was allegedly sexually harassed by the head of a department. So it is not just a lecturer. This is a man who is in charge of the whole department. So you can understand the capacity of that person. So, but when we waved in, we found out that the students have written to the deputy rector because the rector was not in campus, and these actions were not taken. And even for the fact that the lecturer, sometimes when they perform these acts, they have cabals, they have like minds, they know themselves, they know where they meet. And the lecturer was constantly inviting the student to hotel because he lives in a hotel. He does not even live in a house. He lodges himself in a hotel. And when this female student got to know that I am a former union president of that same institution, I am a former NAS president, and I'm now executive director of an NGO, someone advised, report this matter to Chinonso Obasi. And when the matter got to me, we relocated from Abuja, got to the institution. We met with the student. She gave us all the complaints and everything. At the end of the day, we resolved to get the prayers of the student. She made her prayers. She said she's under a heavy threat. I said, forget about the threat. Where the strength of the lecturer ends, that is where our own strength starts as a non-governmental organization, taking it further. At the end of the day, we resolved the whole issue. The student is now a copper in Kebbi State University, serving in Kebbi State. But we are also watching carefully to know the management side, the decisions they have taken. Because the institution I'm talking about, the rector of the institution is a man of God, is a vulnerable in a church. So we are waiting carefully to see the stand he will take. Because the committee that was set up to look into this matter, from the girls' report, the girl made us understand that the committee pleaded that they don't want a negative image of an institution. But the negative image of an institution is not more important than the negative effect or the psychological effect what the girl have passed through all this period.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Obasi. Well, let's get the view from Esther Ozoma. The cases of sexual harassment or sex for grades is not as complex, or could we describe the different complexities to it?
Well, very, very simple. The university environment is not divorced from the Nigerian society.
Sure.
And so you find the excesses, the extravagance of sexual predators that is tolerated in the society. Of course, what would the university or higher institution community do about it? Our criminal justice system is not cheap to provoke the law. It's not cheap. You know, Obasi was just saying how he relocated to Auchi. That costs a lot of money. It is not cheap. Yes, it's not cheap to lay a complaint to the police and provoke the processes to ensure that that people are brought to book. Let me tell you, it is not cheap. I practice law and I celebrate it, you know, that I practice law aggressively. It is not cheap. And so you find, therefore, in a society of persons who live below the poverty level, and then they say, oh, the daughter you managed to send to school. The mother will say, oh, my daughter, please, face your studies, leave it to God. And then it thrives. Sex for food in Nigeria is celebrated. Hello? Did we not all see that it was reported in the IDP camps, IDPs, people who have been evicted from their homes for no... They were being, say, listen, if you want to eat food, you have to have sex with me. What did our Nigerian society do about it? What? Sex for food. Okay, what did we do? What about sex for employment? What about sex for car? Sex for hair? Sex is a currency. Yes. And it buys things. The institutions that should checkmate these excesses, you know, are also entrenched in it, regrettably. All right? There was a student from one of the northern universities. She managed to get pictures of her lecturer naked. It was Sahara reporters, Premium Times, you know, reported, oh, this student, he said, you must sleep with me, and then she arranged. What happened to that student? What happened to that lecturer? It's still on the internet. What happened? You know, I can't talk much about it because we are still in court, so I can't discuss it openly. But what I'm saying is this: the failure of our society, all right, to checkmate these excesses, the weakness, particularly of our criminal justice system. The police there's very little Nigerian police can do. It's overwhelmed. There's a deluge of cases like this. They are ill-equipped, they are underfunded, they are undermanned, and so the predators do what? They're having a field day. So if you must insist, it doesn't matter, it is the norm or it's not the norm. Well, I don't expect, you know, our good friend from Lagos to say it's not the norm. All right? Like when they say lawyers are liars, you know, don't expect me as a lawyer to say it's true. Yes, because it's about a class. But the power relations is evident, and the inability of our system to check it, that's why it's getting out of hand.
Thank you very much, Esther. Okay.
Esther Zama, thank you very much. Well, of course, we indicated our guest joining us from our Port Harcourt Network Center, Mrs. Ibim Seminatari. She's, of course, right there. Former Commissioner for Information in Rivers State, former Acting Managing Director of NDDC, and also a journalist, a graduate of University of Benin. Ibim, when this story broke, of course, you posted a story on your Facebook wall, which also went viral. But give us a sense of what you think is happening with regard to the prevalence of the activities of sexual predators on our campuses.
Well, Kingsley, it's crazy to even begin to talk about how far-reaching this madness goes. And this is across generations. You find that young girls get into school at the ages of 15, ages of 16, and some person thinks that it's okay to take advantage of young girls who've come into school straight from the protection of either boarding school or their homes, and someone chooses to prey on them. And it's interesting when I hear people saying it's just a few deviants. A few would mean that we're talking in terms of 1 out of 10 or out of 100. Even at that, you're dealing with 10%, and 10% is high. But you're talking about a situation where across generations, you go into campuses and children are talking about being preyed on. And I don't think it's okay for us to deal with this like it's just another minor infringement. It's not. People's lives are being messed up. People are being traumatized. And like Esther says, it's perhaps a mirror of what goes on across sectors in our country, where young people are being preyed upon. And I'll say that quite easily. I'm not holding brief for just girls. I know that there are boys who suffer this as well. But the fact of the matter is that we have a situation where young people are being traumatized and some of their lives are messed up for a lot more than we care to imagine.
All right, still with you, Sister Metari. For comments out there, some are actually saying these are actually issues for academically weak students. But you just raised the point of young persons, 15, 16, just getting into schools. The case we're actually taking a peg from, that is the one for new students just coming in. And it breaks one's heart to actually see that, okay, what kind of lessons are the students who are expected to actually learn from these lecturers or from their ivory towers, as the case may be? What is that ethical background that is being broken in the lives of these ones at this point against what they're supposed to be learning from school?
In terms of ethical background, what is being broken is the fact that a lecturer in school actually, and we talked about power relations, sits in a position where you're supposed to be a guardian, quote unquote, where you're supposed to be a person in a position of authority, a person who's supposed to be providing tutelage and instruction, and therefore you're supposed to be above board, hopefully, and then you lose that status when you choose to take advantage of a student. Now, I hate to hear the argument about academically weak students. And that's for the simple reason that, first is that let's even assume, without conceding that the child is weak, does that give you an excuse to exploit the child? Let's assume. But in many cases too, you find that it's not always about a student who is academically weak. It's not. Sometimes it's about a student who is naive and doesn't know what to do. This child may not be academically weak. And there have been instances, and I know of instances, where the students are not academically weak students. They're just students who are scared to say that this has happened to them. They're students who are not able to announce it. And some, in the past, it was a question of, if you report, then every other lecturer is going to gang up against you. So children are even scared to report. I know students who were A students, and they were marked with D's and F's. In some cases where they were bold enough to report, they got a remark. But if you're 15 or 16, you're not always bold enough to fight. You're not. You're scared that if you take it to the Senate, you might become the pariah on campus. You don't want to be a pariah. So it's when you breach the ethical conduct of breaking your role as a guardian, as breaking your role as someone who ought to be helping with instruction, to become the person who is preying on these students. I mean, honestly, crossing those lines, I don't know. I don't know how more pathetic it gets.
Okay, well, Ibim, thanks a lot. We'll return to you later in the course of the conversation. But let's see if we can get across now to Professor Menoma in our Jos Network Center. Well, I think we'd like to go over to Jos so that we can get Professor Menoma's comment on this. We're already taking Dr. Ashiru from Ibadan Network Center. So if we can have him pop up on the screen, then that would be advisable. That would be useful for us.
Okay, let's, while we'll wait Jos' signal, let's get back to Obasi. Now, when students come in, or at least we know there are usually orientation, well, that is if it's still as formidable as it used to be. can we have a sense of what students are expected to do once they come in? At least once to actually help them fortify themselves, especially from stories they've heard. And also there are codes from the Senate, or at least from the school's governing body, to actually look into aspects of this. That is why we'll have the case of, okay, should it happen? We have people actually stepping to investigate and some of those ones. How have this been able to be balanced in the school system?
Well, the fact remains that, yes, we still have orientation programs for new intakes in institutions of learning, especially for the first-year students. But you find out that institutions is now becoming more political than what it ought to be. Political in the sense that an orientation program that needs to cover like a week discussing about issues and code of conduct and where to run to where there are issues and all that. You find out that through the office of the Dean Student Affairs, they just organize 20 minutes or 10 minutes program just to as if it's a premeditated situation, just for them to have a platform to siphon a particular money that have been allocated for that program. So the orientation program doesn't really go deeply to do the needful by giving the students the orientation and for them to know the do's and don'ts and to know the ethics and what they need to understand about institution. So from the office of the Dean Student Affairs, they are not really doing well. And from the student union government, just as I earlier stated, when you don't have a formidable student union government in the institution, the students seems to have nowhere to run to. Without even the management must understand that when they help student union government to stand on its own and checkmate her activities, it will also help them to do greater jobs in the institution. Jobs like giving confidence to the students that if the chief executive is not accessible, you have the student union body to complain issues to. And when the student union body cannot in any way help your matter, you have the Dean Student Affairs, or that you have your head of department, or that you have your departmental president, or you have your cost rep. These are set of authorities that exist in institution. But because of the fear that when you have a formidable student union body, management is always scared of uprising or students union challenging things that are not going well. But when you don't give them that opportunity to be formidable, it will be affecting and it will be obvious in things like this kind of sexual harassment. Just as I told you earlier, if a student knows that the student union president is an active one, he doesn't need to go and run to management. He will just report to your student union president. It is the student union president who have a direct link with the chief executive, or with the Dean Student Affairs, or with the DVC academics or administration, or whosoever that is in charge that can have that direct. Because sometimes, you know, the bureaucracy of an average student having access to a chief executive is not common. But you can run to your student union president in his lodge, in his class, or anywhere. So to just dot it a bit, I feel that when we have formidable student union bodies, it will help in checkmating these activities.
Okay. All right. No, Esther, just hang on a second. That's one of the remedies that is proposed now. They say more formidable student union governments and student union governments that will actually also take on this issue. I'm sure when they are campaigning for offices, nobody talks about that. You just say the usual aluta. If they do aluta on this, I'm sure that parents and guardians will be delighted. Let's go over now to our Just Network Center, where Professor Mohammed Mainama, former Vice Chancellor of Nasarawa State University, is joining us again. Professor Mainama, let's have your take on what ordinarily had been a silent scourge, but is now coming out so regularly in the open, sexual harassment on our campuses.
Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigerians. The issue is actually very frustrating for those of us that have been in the university for a very long time, either as students or later as lecturers, later as leaders of the universities. The most important aspect of it, I believe, is to do everything to prevent it. And that is to say, there should be efforts to engage stakeholders, to let them appreciate the fact that it is really a major problem. It is just like any other form of corruption. Once you allow it to thrive, then you cannot achieve the objective of setting up a university. The fairness, the justice that it is expected of those elements in the university could not be achieved if you allow people to gain some level of what they do not really deserve. So that is really the issue. And my take is that the starting point is to make it impossible for a lecturer to determine in a particular subject the fate of a student completely. The system as it is, where we have moderation of scripts, where we have external examiners coming to look at what has happened, I think it should be more rigorous than this. Also, in a situation where people have reasons to say that what is given to them is not what they deserve, I think both the individual and those that are observers, I mean like the classmates, can also allege that they feel that this person has gained favor beyond what he is supposed to get. And if the system will accommodate some other people asking for remark of certain other papers, that may give us the desired results that we require in order to have a system that is proof, where we will not tolerate situation where people can gain advantage that they do not actually deserve such advantage. The challenges, however, is that the autonomy in the system gives it another coloration. But what I mean by that is that you find out that lecturers are given almost 100% autonomy in the subject they handle. My take is that if there are checks where in a particular subject there is more than one person that is taking control of that particular subject, if you have about 5 people marking a particular subject, then you may find out that no individual lecturer can make a student to pass. That may make it impossible for this type of sexual harassment that we're talking about. And in the moderation, we should also take cognizance of the fact that a lot of the external examiner is given a lot of time to look at these scripts holistically, not where we do what we do now, that you just sample some and do. And at the end of the day, we should also allow a situation where within even up to 10 years, people can still challenge a grade that a particular student gets, so that and the Senate should go by the rules. Not at a point you say that people can then vote on a matter that has some criminal tendencies. I think if these checks are put into the system, we will be on our way to challenge this menace in the university system.
Okay, well, Professor Menoma, thank you very much for your comments. I mean, just to very briefly recap what you have indicated, that there's need for moderation of the autonomy that is almost at large with regard to lecturers who handle a particular course. Have external examiners come in, but some persons would argue that normally would be for a final year student, those who are in their last year, because you can't have external examiners come in 100 level, 200 level, 300, 400 for, say, a 5-year course. But the point you have made is also is a valid one. And more importantly, you've also talked about the fact that a student, should be given a time frame up to, say, 10 years, even after graduating, with the degree that the student believes, a female student who's been harassed, look, this couldn't possibly have been my graduating grade on account of the fact that, look, I seem to have been, I faced this harassment. Now that I'm no longer under the intimidation of that lecturer, let me lay my complaint and proceed with it. But one other point you mentioned, and let's also drill into this, that's why I'm still staying with you, Professor Menoma. You said, look, this is a form of corruption. Now, if we took the analogy to say that the lecturer occupies an office, And that office, of course, includes teaching, grading, but more importantly, as Ibim said, the Ibim Cemetery joined us from Port Harcourt, what we have is a relationship of a guardian to that of an acolyte. That's to say, look, the lecturer stands in loco parentis for the student. Should sexual harassment therefore now be reconceptualized as abuse of power or abuse of office with proper sanctions that normally would accompany that?
Yes, I agree wholly. That's why I say it is a form of abuse. That there is nothing, whether even a parent can even abuse his own child. You find that once we have a situation where people take advantage of whatever form of things they do, as far as I'm concerned, it's a form of corruption. And whether they are the direct beneficiaries or some other people are the beneficiaries to that kind of things they do. So my take is that, again, the fundamental is that people go into these things, maybe you find out that it is not like before, where people become lecturers because they want to become lecturers. You find within the last 15, 20 years, people are just coming to teaching because they don't have any other alternative. Unlike our time, where you leave a job that is even paying more than what the teacher, like for instance, I left NCR in Lagos with a salary of over 6,000 naira per month, and I returned to the university to collect 570 naira in 1992. So we don't have kind of that zeal to impact knowledge. What we have is that people are doing because they think that there are certain benefits that they can also gain from teaching, not like they want to advance the course of knowledge. And that is very fundamental. That is why we must try to go back to basis and see that those that are going to teach are agreeing to the conditions the way they are, and they are going to do justice to the kind of things they do.
Thank you very much, Professor Minoma. We'll get back to you in the course of the discussion. Let's get to Dr. Dele Ashiru, Chairman UNILAG chapter of ASU, in our Ibadan studio. Dr. Ashiru, yes, we've had the benefit of listening to the other participants on the program this morning. One thing is key, and that is the place of the lecturer, or at least the lecturer now, as someone who is so held in high regard for morality and also the ethical standard to actually take on the students, whether at the opening level, that's 100 level, perhaps in the institution, or whatever time the student is coming in. Now, let's look at such things that bring about the vulnerability of this female student with the random lecturers, because you've already put up an argument that certainly is not every one of you that's involved in this act. But what are such things that bring about the vulnerability that put these females in the presence of these human beings?
Well, thank you very much. I think the first point to amplify is the fact that, like the former Vice Chancellor of Sarah State University pointed out, today we have a lot of individuals in the university who are there because they need a job, not because they saw, teaching and scholarship as a calling, which also requires that they remain above board. So I think the first thing to do is for the system to return back to its days of glory, where only those who are scholars, are allowed to teach on our campuses. Secondly, you also find a situation where those who have found their way into the system through the back door and are enjoying the backings of the powers that be, either the administration in the university or even some government, some individuals in government have been able to bring these individuals into the university system. It then becomes difficult for the system to sanction this kind of erring lecturer?
I'm sorry, we have to apologize for this. We're having some challenge with uplink to our Ibadan Network Center. We'll clear that up. Our engineers are working on it. Dr. Ashiru, please, we're going to have to pause you, and you will have the benefit of recasting what you had said. First of all, taking up from the points articulated by Professor Menoma. So while that is being cleared up, let's return to our studios. Esther Zoma, you listened already to the propositions, by Chinonso has said, look, have a strong student union government. Professor Menoma has also ticked off a number of those points, together, of course, with IBIM in Port Harcourt and Dr. Ashiru. Well, it might be a long haul, but some persons will argue that quite clearly the caliber and quality of lecturers that we have on most of our campuses is probably why we are having this phenomenon of lectures rather than lecturers. And it's also talked about moderation of scripts, by more than one lecturer, so that you can minimize the power that single lecture, might have in targeting a female student and say, look, if there's no quid pro quo, then you are not likely to pass. So what are your thoughts on these propositions?
You see, Kingsley, the truth of the matter is this. When it comes to situations like this, particularly in the university, you cannot you can't divorce it. Look at the multiplicity of cult groups. Lecturers are blended men. I use that word advisedly. Blended. Lecturers are flying colors. SUG, hello. It's not a walk in the park. It's also a blended. You fly one color or the other. So there's an allegiance to a particular line. And so what betide you therefore? If you're a female student, you go to a blended. Of course, I schooled in this country, and I did SUG activism. All right. So
you were a woman leader or something.
Yes, in fact, I was called Beijing right from the Imo State University, that great school that produces scholars. All right. So what betide you? If you go and report to a blended SUG.
What do you mean by blended? Say that to our viewers.
Blended means, somebody who is flying a particular color. They lay allegiance. They are members of cult groups. And they have students as their members. In SUG too, not all of them. Let's use that word now. So you find that everybody follows a particular line. Where are you going to? Who is protecting you? So if you are a vulnerable, 15, 16, very brilliant, you just entered the university. What betide you if you report to a blended person? How far really can you go? All right? So that is why I disagree with the solution that's a strong SUG. What we need is very strong laws. Like the former DVC said.
Vice Chancellor.
Yes. Once we have strong laws and instruments that implement, enforce those laws, it doesn't matter where you commit it. Because it's not any less of a criminal offense because you are a lecturer who committed it. Let the law take its course. Even if you are a pastor, sex for anointing, you are a malam, sex, you molest little boys under you. The law should be there. That's the whole idea of civilization, so that people will be subject to laws.
But laws also within the universities actually looking at some of these areas. That's why we have a situation where they call for investigation to actually address this. Are such laws still relevant?
Yes, we have laws. But like I said, perhaps a deterrent. We even have standard procedure. There are police stations in every university. We must come to a stage where you must approach the law, provoke it, even though it's not cheap. But if it won't work if you don't work it. Report that and say, listen, this is what happened. All right? That is in a situation where, because everything is failing. But if we cannot maintain our laws, then we're not a democracy.
We're still on this, Uzoma, Esther. The Nigerian police force has created what they call a gender desk.
Yes.
Okay, where incidents like this can be reported, but it is not necessarily the case that every police station has a gender desk. So, in terms of this, say on campuses, what would be the recommendation? Might the creation of or the establishment of a gender desk on police post campuses be advisable?
Yes, very much so. But even where they don't exist, they still enforce the law. I know of a student who was harassed by a lecturer. All that student did was to walk into that small police station in the university, wrote a statement and provoked, just let me tell you, the threat that you have provoked the law against that threat alone calls for order.
Yeah, but there's also the point that this is a cabal, there's a syndicate, and that, Dr. Ashiru said earlier that this is a deviant behavior. And one individual isn't just a deviant. Ibi will say, look, assuming this is 10% of the lecturers, well, it's still too much. But that this is a syndicate, that it's not just one person. But one. Mr.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree. That's why you must take it outside, the university environment. Bring Nigeria, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, into it by provoking the laws of the land. Let's look at a fantastic legislation that actually criminalizes sexual harassment. That is Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. It criminalizes sexual harassment in the workplace, domestic environment, in the university. So if you don't walk the law, it won't work.
So where are the NGOs to help popularize this so that there will be public knowledge as to the provisions?
The law is the vigilant, not the indolent.
I agree with you. That's one of the principles of equity. Esther, let's pause you the meantime. We understand that our lines back to Ibadan have been cleared up now. Dr. Dele Ashiru, well, let's give you the opportunity of responding to the question asked earlier. Of course, you were taken out from the point of view of what Professor Menoma had said. Professor Menoma raised a number of points. Let me just paraphrase them very quickly. He talked about the fact that, look, the ivory tower is suffering from poor quality of lecturers, persons who are not passionate about academic work. Then he also made the proposition of moderation of scripts, so that the immense powers of one single lecturer are attenuated. But how feasible that might be, 100, 200, 300 before the final year, is one point you may wish to respond to. Plus, according to him, the creation of a 10-year window for any student who felt harassed sexually to come back and lay a complaint and say, look, the grade you gave me a third class or you gave me a bare pass, this isn't what I was supposed to graduate with. Remoderate my script and let's see how it goes. Let's get your reaction.
Yeah, these are very good suggestions. I have no problem with, those suggestions Professor Menoma has put forward. But I'm also reiterating the fact that the recruitment process must be insulated from the corruption in the system. You find a situation where university administrators and the government of the day encourage, less than stellar individuals to come into the ivory tower and perpetuate these unethical practices. As a union, our union has a code of principle and ethical practices which condemns in its entirety any form of unethical practices, including sexual harassment amongst our students. Amongst our members and against students. And not only that, our union has always stood against unethical practices. And that is why most often we're at loggerheads with university administration and then with the government of the day on all of these issues. So I want to also add to the suggestion by Professor Menoma to say that we should revisit the recruitment processes in our university, so that only scholars will find their ways into the university. I do not see a scholar who will predate on, somebody who he ought to be in loco parentis to. It is condemnable. It is very disheartening. But unfortunately, we find this in our system. I think that all hands must just be on deck to confront this monster and stamp it out from the university system. So I am saying that there should be a review of the recruitment processes and also enforce all of the laws that, are against unethical practices, including sexual harassment.
I just wonder, Dr. Ashiru, I'm just wondering, the passion with which you've spoken is noted, but Is this a matter that the National ASU might wish to take up? Because we appear not to have heard from the National ASU on issues of this nature. What we always hear of are other matters that usually will lead to prolonged strike in the universities.
Yeah, thank you very much. I am actually speaking here as a representative of the national president. The national president ought to have been here, but because, he couldn't make it, that's why he had delegated me to come here. It is not true that the national does not speak on matters that are unethical in the system. Indeed, at our National Executive Council meeting, we do a post-mortem, a review of all of these issues and take proactive measures. I mean, on our campuses, there are campaigns by our union against, unethical practices and sexual harassment, by lecturers. We also have ethics and disciplinary committees in all of the branches to deal with all of these issues. At some point, the national mandated all branches to have a suggestion box at the ASU Secretariat for which students can drop anonymous complaints about harassment from our members. And once we get such, the Ethics and Disciplinary Committee will swift into action to discipline these erring members. Unfortunately, like it is in our society, it is when, victims report and then it gets all of these kind of publicity. When we discipline our members, it is only in the respective universities that, those things are known to. So what I am suggesting is that we should build the confidence of our students to be able to report erring members, and once we get the report, both the union in the respective branch and the university administration should not shy away from dealing decisively with whoever is found, culpable in the matter. Unfortunately, most of the people who commit this offense are very close to the powers that be, and once it happens, they try to sweep it under the carpet, for which our union most often usually challenge. And I also want to lend my voice to the angle of students union on campus, because when students are properly organized, it boosts their confidence to confront and challenge unethical practices within the system. Unfortunately, it is also these administrators who kill unionism on campus. And please let me make an appeal. As emotive as these issues are, when we discuss them, let us separate facts from emotion and from advocacy. Because if we gloss over it and add our emotions and all that, it detracts from the reality on ground. And it is only when we do a proper diagnosis that we'll be able to profile solutions that can resolve the problem. It is not true that all lecturers are cultists. It is not true that all students are cultists. What we should emphasize is to galvanize the capacity of the system to confront this menace, both within the university system and in the larger society.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ashiru. Now to Port Harcourt. Let's find out more where we should actually start pushing out tentacles. Everyone has read from the aspect of student union, the recruitment process. Also, people of the opinion that even the home front society should actually take a look at that. What kind of cordiality is there for children or for students with their parents to actually look into this when you cannot, because we've had cases of underreported sexual harassment. That's why, at least of the opinion that that's what is causing this increase. Where do you stand in trying to tackle all of this?
First is that it's good to hear ASU say that they would like to take a stand against it. My personal view, and some of this is from experience, is the fact that ASU will protect its own. I I do know of a situation at the University of Benin in a particular department, and I'm careful not to mention names, where students, in fact, the Students' Union had actually practically kidnapped a lecturer, forced him to face trial, and this matter was reported to ASU. That lecturer is still a lecturer in the university. That lecturer is in fact a professor in the university at this time. And that lecturer continues to prey on students generations after generations, and it's a going conversation. Now, my point is, ASU's got to do a bit more than tell us that they don't like what is going on. They've got to do a bit more by saying, we're going to actually set up, units that will protect students, so that allow for whistleblowing and protection of the whistleblowers. And we actually do a kind of name and shame, where we're going to do example, okay, this lecturer has been found, ASU has taken a decision, has investigated, and ASU is actually going to make an example of this person. I think that's one of the things ASU can do to ensure that students have confidence in being able to come forward and report. I agree with you that the matter of underreporting is a situation, and I say that even from personal experience, where I had a situation on campus and I couldn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my parents. It wasn't something you wanted to talk about. And so yes, we do have that situation. And I come from a home where my parents talk with me and are very free, very open. But I didn't even want to bother them with it. So we've got to begin to also teach young people to feel free to talk about it. Because at 15, quite frankly, if somebody preys on you, you're not it's not something you willingly want to speak about. Especially if you're used to, you're from a very religious background or one thing or the other. So even when you have parents who are very free, very open, it's not the first thing you want to do, And so we're gradually coming to a culture of openness, and the conversations we're having now will begin to give young people make it easier for them to talk about these things. It wasn't something that people talked about very easily. So even these conversations are good. The issue of laws, and I like what Esther talks about laws, but then do we even know what laws we can, we're not all as versed as Esther or as other people in knowing what we can take advantage of. And so that also becomes a conversation to be had. How do we ensure that we teach people a bit more as to what their rights are? And so that's where the matter of orientation comes in. And even just having one sheet of paper when you get to a campus that tells you what you can, what kind of what is available to you in terms of how can I, for instance, approach, who can I approach, and things like that. So even the universities helping students who come in with information as to who they can call, numbers they can call, and trying to make sure there are some of those numbers that can be anonymous, because quite frankly, for a student who comes in, you're dealing with a matter of dependency, authority, trust, between lecturers and students. And that's what is eroded when these things happen. But, dependency is a key factor. So if you come in as a student, you're dependent on that lecturer. There's the matter of authority. So if you don't feel like you can be shielded, it may not be too easy to talk about it. I think that those are some of the things that the university can do to make it easier for people to feel free to talk about it. But frankly, I think ASU can play a dominant role by helping us announce, name, shame, announce, take action, and let us see that you're taking action. Because quite frankly, from where a lot of us sit, we believe that ASU protects his own.
All right. All right. Well, you have been seconded here by Esther in our studios. But thank you very much. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll take the tweets that have come in from our viewers and, of course, get the closing thoughts of all our guests. Very valid and interesting propositions that you have all made.
For more than 10 years, NTA Educational Television has continued to champion the discovery of young scientists and artists across the country. The 2019 National Children's Expo promises to bring to light the best of innovations and creativity in the science and arts categories. Theme: promoting unity and innovations in youths as agents of change through science and arts. Venue: NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. Date: Sunday, October 20th to Thursday, October 24th, 2019. For more information, please call the following numbers. This event is proudly supported by NTA ETV, promoting learning.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Thank you for staying tuned into the program. And we have interesting comments from our viewer. We'll run through them now. From Ishaq Abdullahi, he says, this is a great topic that clamors for a robust discussion by the society. The BBC has revealed the worms only in 2 regions, but they should extend such investigative journalism to the universities in the northern Nigeria where the situation is pathetic.
All right, Sonny Michael Amakoje says sexual harassment is as old as Nigeria's oldest higher institution. Perhaps we shouldn't wait again to be told that there's also sexual harassment in job seeking.
Abdul tweets, the best way about it is to report such acts immediately to the authorities so that discretion monitoring and investigation will commence to unravel such culprits for sanctions. This should apply to both parties involved.
Comrade Ngala, the only solution is to dismiss any lecturer or even student that engages in sexual harassment from the institution and then prosecute the individual.
Festus Akimboyewa tweets, we must not forget that student-to-student sexual harassment is as evil as lecturer to student to that of the student and must be confronted. All stakeholders must provide the support, time and resources needed to address sexual harassment and misconduct in our society.
Chris Simeon tweets, most times, according to him, I blame the ladies. You are approaching a male lecturer and you are half naked. What do you think would happen?
Jones Ferrari tweets, the problem can only be solved if suspected lecturers are jailed for life instead of mere suspensions.
Now, Bashiru Omeza tweets, it says sexual harassment has been a repeated headline as a result of indecent dressing and infatuation. As you know, the hormones can't be controlled, but rather regulated. The narrative should be subverted with harsh laws and immediate action in support of victims.
All right. Abbas Abubakar says a lecturer must always take himself as a father all the time, because once students are in school, they are not under their parents. Again, female students should always dress properly and decently, because the kind of dressing does also contribute a lot.
Festus Akimboyewa, increased staff training and preventive campaigns will go a long way in addressing this issue. Senior leaders in our universities must also play a prominent role in combating this scourge.
Okay, Chris Simeon, this position already we've talked about. The majority of these girls or ladies involved in sex for marks, sex for grades, have academic deficiency. They are not academically sound and ask for grades they don't deserve.
Mike Ayakwa, the issue of sexual harassment must be viewed in different perspectives. It's an open secret that many girls on campuses believe that they can lure lecturers with sex for marks. A lot of rot is happening on the campus.
Well, Faisal Unisa says in a society where marriage is expensive, then sexual harassment is commonly perpetrated. To put an end to this known global epidemic, we need to enlighten parents on the negative impacts of such acts on the future generation and the present community.
Steve Bond now says sexual harassment occurs in most institutions. The lecturers act like mini gods and should face the wrath of the proposed law. Outside academics, sexual harassment, of course, is a form of sex for employment and sex for lucrative postings and promotions.
Okay, quickly, this one from Law Alpha C says sexual harassment has become a norm in our tertiary institutions where both male and female lecturers take undue advantage of their students to abuse them sexually for special considerations. The scenario is 50-50 as some female students depend on it to pass. These days, many female students dress almost naked with reckless impunity sexual intercourse between lecturers and female students is no longer news. The lecturers caught in the act are mere scapegoats and unlucky. We need serious prayers for God's healings in our universities.
Well, of course, our guests have already made a number of proposals as to what can be done. But let's get the closing thoughts, as it were, now of our guests, beginning with Professor Menoma. Professor Menoma, of course, you made your propositions. You also listened to the responses of the other guests. I'm wondering, I mean, this is a major issue now, not just on account of the latest report or what happened, say, at the University of Lagos, but we saw last year a professor was dismissed from Obafemi Awolowo University. There are other accounts in different parts of the country. Is this a matter, I mean, I know that you are out of the loop, is this a matter that the Committee of Vice Chancellors should also take up and see how they might propose common action, including, for instance, the proposals that you have made and what IBIM Cemetery also said, create helplines for calls, whether anonymously or otherwise, and then get to be sure that there is proper orientation for students, and at the end of the day, that degree that you get, having been found worthy, both in character first and the learning, is truly so. Because what we are seeing now is that those who are even issuing those degrees are found wanting in character.
Thank you very much, Kinsley. I think as it is, the Committee of Vice Chancellors, the ASU, the unions are doing the little they can do within the prevailing circumstances. But what is missing actually is the focus. Once we agree that the starting point for matters like this is to try as much as possible to prevent it, you realize that through advocacy, through public engagement, through protection of those that are bringing up the matters to fore, through sanctions, but most importantly, I think it is through recovery. Once you do not allow people to benefit from that kind of event, and what I think is that even those that are not affected could initiate a process where people that we ordinarily feel that they gain from this kind of menace can be called to answer to what they are doing. For instance, there is nothing wrong in a student. You know that somebody is having an affair with somebody and that they are gaining advantage that they ought not to get. You can petition. Let us have that kind of circumstances. And I believe the Committee of Vice Chancellors, the ASU, the unions should be in a position to support that kind of an engagement where there is a little change in our system, where people that ordinarily could have said that they don't have anything to do with the matter are allowed to come into it, so that these things can actually be exposed. But like I said, principally, everything to do to ensure that at the beginning it does not occur, it does not happen. I think it is our best way to go.
Thank you very much, Professor Minoma. Let's get to Ibadan to get a closing thought from Dr. Iliashiru.
Well, I think I'd like to put on record that ASU will not protect unethical members. ASU defends the system, the rights and privileges of its members when such are trampled upon. But once a member crosses the line, ASU will ensure that justice is done. I want to also say that on our campuses, we have helplines. I think what we should begin to emphasize is the need for victims to be courageous enough to make reports. As I speak with you on the campuses, on Unilag campuses, the Akoka and Ideraba, there are campaign posters against sexual harassment, and there are anonymous phone numbers for which any student can drop an SOS message. I am aware that the university also has, at the counseling units, counselors whom victims can go to or can send anonymous reports to. what I think we should begin to do is develop the capacity of victims to be able to make reports so that appropriate sanctions can be meted out to whoever is found culpable in unethical practices. Because the very essence of a university begins to be eroded when transactions there are based on practices that are unethical. And because the people we train today are going to take over sooner than later, we must ensure that all of the instructions that are given, both open and hidden, are those that reinforces the correct values a society wants to be identified with. My closing remark is that our union condemns in very strong terms sexual harassment among students and is prepared to do all that is necessary to ensure that justice is done each time there is a violation.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Dele Ashiro. Let's go over to Ibim Cemetery from our Port Harcourt Network Studios. Ibim, you've made your points, but I'm sure that you would like to leave us with a parting shot.
Well, it's just to say that we must begin to protect the victims. We have a situation where we live in a country where we do not protect the victims, where we slut shame victims, where we find excuses why victims should be victims, ranging from saying, oh, they didn't dress right, to the academically weak students, to the, everything but the right thing. And I think we must put victim protection at the fore when we're discussing these things, whether it is sex for grades, or sex for employment, or sex for hair, like Esther said. We must begin to talk about protecting the victim. And for me, that is what is critical.
Okay. All right, Ibim, thank you very much. Esther Uzoma.
Yes. Just follow up on what Ibim just said. We must begin, to make very clear protocols. What are the protocols for reporting sexual harassment in the universities? It must be clear. Just like students are taught A, B, C, D. That is how the protocols for reporting should be entrenched in it should be the simplest thing. What are the protocols? Secondly, meetings with lecturers, one-on-one meetings with lecturers and students should be abolished. Either you go through your staff academic advisor or the dean of student affairs. If it is an academic complaint, don't ever go meet a lecturer anywhere. All right? So if we formulate these protocols, then it's easy to see when you've crossed the line, then you've crossed the line.
All right, thank you very much, Esther.
So
it's a continuous process, no doubt.
Yes, well, for me, I encourage institutions of learning to appreciate modern technology. I recommend they should install closed circuit television, that is CCTV, in lecturers' offices, and that will be help to also checkmate what is happening in offices. And students should be made to understand that it is unethical for you to visit lecturers outside the academic environment, so that whatever that happens in the offices, it can be played back for you to have a view. Formidable student union body is very, very important to have advocacy, symposiums and talk shows with students one-on-one, and to also, when students have confidence in their union body, they can be free to report issues at all times. And more so, as a non-governmental organization, we will join forces with other NGOs to see how the bill that is being pushed by distinguished Senator Ovie Omo-Agege, the Deputy Senate President, to see how it comes to limelight, because it will really give protection to the lecturers, give protection to the students, and to criminalize the arts.
All right, Chinonso Abasi, I would like to thank you. Esther Uzoma, right here with us in the studios. Deep appreciation to you. From Jos, we were joined by Professor Mohammed Menoma, former Vice Chancellor, Nasarawa State University. Always a delight having you. Mrs. Ibim Cemetery joining us from our Port Harcourt Network Center. Thanks a lot for your insights. And also from Ibadan, we're joined by Dr. Dele Asiro. He's the chairman of the University of Lagos chapter of the Academic Staff Union of Investors. Of course, he did say that he was standing in for the ASU president and speaking on behalf of the National ASU. Dr. Asiro, thank you very much for your contribution to our discussion this morning. All right, so that does it for that conversation. Let's go over now to our segments, and sports is next.
An entertaining friendly at Singapore's National Stadium ended all square as Brazil and Nigeria played out a 1-1 draw. The Super Eagles took the lead against the run of play, with the Galapagos Rangers striker Aribo quick to react on the Brazil box, lashing home in the 35th minute.
Trying to create something out of this. It's not a bad ball at all to Moses Simon.